having no trouble.
Who is the king of rock and roll? His name is Robert Johnson, and he is the man who defined the blues. Where'd the blues come from? This is history that I'm going to give you right here. People are scared to death to tackle this thing. They're afraid of being called a racist. I'm just giving you the facts. After the Civil War, the time of Reconstruction, some of the voodoo queens of those meetings later became the mothers of illegitimate children who were the first of the blues and jazz musicians. People like Jelly Roll Morton and some of these other guys.
Man, this is some bullshit.
The hardships of this laboring society were cloaked with the facade of great natural beauty and elegant living. But always behind the facade, the facade, the facade, the facade.
What is it about the blues that captivates us so deeply, and where did this profoundly expressive genre truly originate? In this video essay, we'll embark on a journey to uncover the raw, uncut narrative of life's highs and lows encapsulated within the blues. The story begins not with a musician, but with a writer consumed by passion for their craft, and aspiring novelists who poured everything into their work only to face a pivotal moment of failure. Yet, from the ashes of this crash emerged a new dawn of realization. Their words were not merely strings of characters, they were an outpouring of channeled discontent. Reflecting on the path of blues legends, one wonders if a deeper immersion in the works of genre-defining authors could have refined this writer's craft to near perfection. Just as blues legends absorbed the essence of those first records they heard in jukebox joints and on early players that flooded the Mississippi Delta, and then they reimagined it into something uniquely personal. Could a similar approach have honed this writer's voice, transforming inspiration into a distinct echo of their soul? But who is this individual? It was me. My journey mirrored the transformative process of the blues artist. My epiphany, if you could call it that, wasn't just a moment of insight. It was a profound connection to the essence of the blues itself. See, listen, the blues isn't simply about a transactional pact with some supernatural entity. It represents a metaphorical deal with our deepest, most hidden fears and pains. It's a confrontation with the shadows within, a testament to the resilience and creativity of those who transformed struggle into a powerful, resonant legacy. You know, first, let me lay it out to you straight. Blues music didn't exactly hit the right note with me at the get-go. I felt like I was grappling with a foreign tongue. I guess I'm in pretty good company because, as James Brown said about the blues, I don't remember whether I sang them, but I know I never liked them. I still don't like the blues, never have. So the path to writing and researching this video essay was fraught with psychological barriers that nearly led me to abandon the project multiple times. I mean, the difficulty of maintaining objectivity was overwhelming. When the narrative touched upon the lives of my ancestors, the task of articulating coherent thoughts in the silent hours of the night seemed insurmountable. Just as I was on the brink of adding another unfinished manuscript to the piles of what could be deemed failures, I guess this is a common rite of passage for any writer, right? Well, I heard the silent holla in the night. It was as if time and space had collapsed. allowing me to hear the echoes of ancestral voices guiding me through my search for understanding. These voices or spirits seem to nudge me gently towards completion, eager for their stories to be told. Stories that had been obscured by researchers who suggested the blues originated in prisons rather than from the lived experiences of a people. My journey to completing this video essay was lifted on the wings of the melismatic vocalizations characteristic of the blues, a testament to the endearing spirit of those who suffered yet aspired for freedom. Within the melismatic vocalizations of a blues singer, one can discern the echoes of ancestral cries, a testament to the resilience and sacrifices of those who endured unspeakable indignities. The silent holla in the night, a phrase that encapsulates the essence of the blues, ties back to the painful yet powerful yells of torment that once resonated across fields under the cover of darkness. These vocal expressions, rooted in the depths of suffering and the pinnacle of endurance, form a bridge to our past, reminding us of the cost of freedom and the indomitable spirit of those who came before us. We're all tuned into the later riffs of blues, R&B, soul,
and I'm calling
neo-soul, not to mention its other offshoots birthed from America's color line, rock and roll, country music, and the like.
people without a thing.
Treating blues like a language to be learned, that's the key. It's like cracking the code of a complex dialect. Think of it like Latin, the bedrock of European languages. Tongues morphed over centuries into the Romance languages, English, Spanish, French, Italian. Master Latin and you're halfway to understanding its modern descendants. You start picking up on the echoes of its structure in every variant. Once I dove deep into the blues, its structure, its soul, the societal pulse it was responding to, I began to catch those subtle acoustic DNA markers in today's music. Take Bobby Womack's If You Think You're Lonely Now. It's teeming with these bluesy genetic imprints, much like modern English phrases that are straight up Latin, and we don't even blink. That recurring guitar riff,
I want to dedicate this song to all the lovers tonight. To all the lonely ones that ain't got nobody.
that's a nod to Lonnie Johnson, the original guitar sleuth.
Well, it's too late to cry, baby.
Not Robert Johnson, but more on that later. Johnson was trying to mimic the raw, distorted sounds of those early brass musicians out of New Orleans. Think about tunes like Good Times by Chic or We Are Family by Sister Sledge. These are upbeat, feel-good tracks, but even in these seemingly joyous blues or blues-influenced songs, if you want to call it that, there's often this offbeat, lingering sound in the chord progressions. It's like a subtle reminder of the fleeting nature of happiness, especially for people of color whose fortunes could flip the moment they stepped out of a club or juke joint. Other blues markers, the heavy gospel influence, the call and response between the backup singers and the lead.
I won't tell no lie. All of the people.
Those piano chord progressions, straight out of a gospel hymnal, and Womack belting it out like he's preaching in a sermon.
Can I get a witness? When it's cold outside.
As Big Bill Brunzi, a preacher turned bluesman who stepped out of the church and into a juke joint, said it best: the blues won't die because spirituals won't die. Blues, a steal from the spirituals, and rock is a steal from the blues. Blues singers start out singing spirituals. Now that we've explored the personal and musical connections to the blues, let's dive into the origins of this powerful genre. From its etymology to its roots in rebellion, the story of the blues is as complex and captivating as the music itself. So what's a better way to describe the blues? Discordant, that's the word. Let's get another thing clear. Blues isn't some distant cousin of jazz. In reality, what we call jazz is actually the first form of blues. As musicians journeyed beyond the Delta, those sharecropping tenants longing to replicate the mesmerizing sound of brass instruments did it the only way they could afford. And that's with an acoustic guitar, which was just a Sears catalog order away. Keep watching, because I'm about to dive deeper into how New Deal era researchers fixated on painting blues as primitive music inadvertently drove a wedge between blues and jazz.
All right, Dolly. You're a fine songster. I've never heard so many good Negro songs.
Thank you, Sir Ball. I sure hope you send Governor O'Callaghan a record of that song I made up about him, because I believe he'll turn me loose.
Now, let's zero in on the genesis of the blues, a tale where Reconstruction, juxtaposition, and disillusionment play starring roles. Listen, these weren't just background elements. They were the essential ingredients, the catalyst in the birth of the blues. And Reconstruction, that's where our story begins. It's a chapter often glossed over, but crucial. Post-Civil War America was a battleground of ideals where the full might of the government was pitted against white supremacist forces. This era was pivotal, a time when newly freed blacks and their allies faced both protection and persecution. It was a period rich in hope, yet marred by fear and violence. Let's get one thing straight. The Civil War didn't just wrap up at Appomattox. Sure, on paper, the North might have clinched the victory, but that was just the beginning of a whole other struggle. We're talking about a fight that went way deeper, right to the heart and soul of the nation. It was like trying to root out deep-seated demons, these lingering shadows of white supremacy that just wouldn't quit. This battle, my friends, is far from over. It was just shifting gears. Now, imagine the emotional roller coaster of this time, the juxtaposition of monumental triumphs and heartbreaking defeats, all unfolding simultaneously. This was the emotional landscape that gave rise to the blues. It was a soundtrack to an area of intense, conflicting emotions. It was a musical mirror reflecting the soul of a nation in turmoil. But the real turning point was disillusionment. The retreat of military protection, the unraveling of civil rights gains, culminating in the crushing blow of Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896. That was a court case. This ruling didn't just uphold racial segregation. It shattered the dreams of equality and progress. And it was in this climate of growing despair and frustration that the blues found its voice. Here's my thesis. The blues emerged from the hearts of black people who had experienced the extreme intensity of both the joy and sorrow in the post-slavery era. After the final defeat of 1896 with the court case, Plessy versus Ferguson, a unique fusion occurred in New Orleans. Classically trained musicians and raw improvisational talents came together, blending their skills and emotions. They created a sound that was more than just melody. It was a reflection of their reality, discordant yet deeply resonant. This was the discordant sound we associate with the blues. We get a front row seat into this genesis of the blues during Reconstruction when General Oliver Howard was dispatched to inform the freedmen and women who had taken possession of land redistributed to them by Freedmen's Bureau, a federal agency established to help Southern blacks transition from their lives as slaves to free individuals. Howard's mission? To tell them that President Johnson's pardon of former Confederate landowners meant that they had to leave the lands they had been promised. Now, I've got mixed feelings about General Howard. Some of his actions with relation to the treatment of indigenous people were, let's say, problematic. But we got to give credit where it's due. President Johnson, a Southerner with little love for the Southern aristocracy, was out of step with the political zeitgeist. He was a man caught between worlds in a back and forth that foreshadowed his eventual impeachment. General Howard initially resisted Johnson's orders. He even went as far as to instruct his agents to conserve 40-acre tracts of confiscated land for emancipated slaves. Yes, we're talking about the legendary promise of 40 acres and a mule. But Johnson, catching wind of this, quickly shut it down and ordered the return of these lands to their white owners. This period showcases a crucial snapshot in the genesis of the blues. Imagine the turmoil, the sense of betrayal, and the raw emotions brewing in the hearts of those who were so close to tasting true freedom. This video dives into the tumultuous times in Washington under President Johnson, highlighting the growing independence of the black population in the South, and Johnson's insistence on their subordination to white power.
For the first 48 days of Andrew Johnson's presidency, Southerners waited anxiously to hear what he would demand before allowing them back into the Union. On May 29, 1865, Johnson announced his plan for what would be called presidential Reconstruction.
There was good evidence in 1865 that a lot of white Southerners, leadership even of the Confederacy, would have accepted relatively harsh policies at that moment. But very soon it became clear that Andrew Johnson wanted a rapid, lenient restoration of the Union with as little alteration of the Constitution and the creation of black civil and political rights as possible.
Johnson would issue blanket pardons for most former Confederates. The rebel states would be encouraged to form new governments quickly. Washington would not interfere. The president's leniency surprised many in the North. Southerners responded with relief.
Johnson actually sets only the most minimal requirements. All they have to do is admit we lost the Civil War. The Civil War is over, slavery and secession are dead. Other than that, there are no requirements.
Johnson was harder on the planter aristocracy. He insisted that wealthy planters and Confederate leaders write him personally and beg for clemency.
This basically eliminates the planter class from leadership of Southern politics. If you're not pardoned, you can't vote, you can't hold office, and you can't get your property back if it's been seized by the federal government.
Andrew Johnson had no sympathy for wealthy planters. He had risen from poverty and identified with poor white Southerners who, before the war, had far outnumbered the slave owners. Now, he was anxious to protect poor whites from what they saw as a new threat.
Poor whites have to face the fact that now that black people are free means that they have to compete with this new element for livelihoods, for social positions, and for political power, ultimately. And this is a very frightening thing.
Johnson's aim is to bring the white South and the white North back together. African Americans just do not play a role in Johnson's vision of the post-war South other than to go back to work and be landless and rightless plantation laborers.
Johnson's vision of reconciliation, excluding black people, and his rapid pardoning of planters are laid bare here. As planters regained their lands, the freedmen and women faced the harsh reality of losing what they thought was theirs.
In Washington, President Johnson shared white Southerners' concerns over growing black independence in the South.
Johnson is seeing a black population who have abandoned the plantations. People who are demanding it, that they be treated in a decent fashion. And Johnson believes they should return to their former places of work, and above all, should accept their subordination to white power and authority.
Andrew Johnson believes there's going to be a reconciliation between North and South. There's going to be a reconciliation of white Northerners and white Southerners. And if black people have to be set aside, fine.
The president abandoned his strict policy toward the planters. By fall of 1865, he was pardoning so many that special clerks had to be hired to keep up with the paperwork.
Johnson thinks that only the planters can really keep these African Americans under control. So very quickly he begins to bring the wealthy planters back into his Reconstruction policy in order to really impose subordination on the former slaves.
The planters only want to be pardoned so that they can get their land back. And so Andrew Johnson complies with their wishes, pardoning 15,000 to 20,000 planters, hundreds of them being pardoned every day. When these planters then are pardoned, they return to their islands and to their acreages all over the South, and they want the people who are then living there removed.
The president ordered that Confederate lands seized by Union troops during the war be returned to the planters, including land confiscated under General Sherman's Field Order 15. In Georgia, the assistant commissioner of the Freedmen's Bureau refused to give planters back their land. Johnson fired him and replaced him with someone who would. In Washington, the head of the Bureau, General O. Howard, sympathized with the freedmen and resisted the president's decree for as long as he could. Finally, in October, Howard set out for the black settlement at Edisto Island off the coast of South Carolina. His orders from President Johnson were to effect an agreement mutually satisfactory to the freedmen and the landowners. Behind the bureaucratic language, Johnson's directive was clear.
General Howard has to tell these former slaves that the land that they thought had been given to them by the federal government now is going to be given back to the former owners. And if they want to remain there, they're going to have to sign labor contracts to work as laborers on these plantations. These people believe that they have a right to this land. To them, this is a violation, a deep betrayal of the promises that the government made to them. They are not willing to just take this lying down.
I'd endeavored to explain the wishes of the president, and with one voice they cried, "No, no." In the noise and confusion, a sweet-voiced Negro woman began the hymn, "Nobody knows the trouble I feel. Nobody knows but Jesus."
Like a mortal
Many had been following events in Washington and insisted they would wait and see what Congress had to say. Others petitioned Howard in writing. Wrote one man, "You ask us to forgive the landowners of our island. The man who tied me to a tree and gave me 39 lashes, who stripped and flogged my mother and my sister, and will not let me stay in his empty hut, except I will do his planting and be satisfied with his price. That man I cannot well forgive." In January 1866, a large contingent of black soldiers arrived at St. Catherine's with orders to restore the land to Jacob Waldberg. Campbell's militia had kept whites off the island, but this was something different.
Dennis Campbell believed that the people had to take things into their own hands sometimes, but African-American freed men are not going to fire on African-American soldiers. No.
General Howard's struggle to uphold the promises made to the freedmen is a poignant reminder of the deep-seated conflicts of the era. There is a woman who spontaneously bursts out with a rendition of a spiritual, "Nobody knows the trouble I've seen." In these scenes, we witness the juxtaposition of triumph and sorrow, a core element of the blues. There was a stubborn defiance, the same sort of defiance we see embedded in the DNA of R&B classics such as Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On,"
Everybody thinks we're wrong, they do.
to hip-hop standards such as Biggie Smalls' "Juicy Fruit."
To all the people that lived above the buildings that I was hustling from that called the police on me when I...
There's a palpable sense of disillusionment, especially in the words of the black man who refused to forgive the landowner for past atrocities. There was a sort of embedded, almost theatrically absurd irony in the situation in which black soldiers were dispatched to evict newly freed slaves from the lands they thought had been promised by the federal government and then restore to the owners who had previously enslaved them. This wasn't an isolated incident, but a common thread weaving throughout the South as the government wrestled with the remnants of white supremacy. Now, in that crucial scene where General Howard Oliver delivers his devastating news to these aspiring black landowners, we witness a powerful and transformative moment. It's here that we bear witness to the process of how blues music finds its true genesis. In the stark juxtaposition of two polar opposites. Profound joy of having recently acquired land they had been forced to labor on before the Civil War, and then deep sorrow of being forced off it. This moment is not just a historical footnote. It's a vivid representation of an emotional dynamo at work. Imagine the scene as a metaphorical generator where the kinetic energy of conflicting emotions, the elation of freedom, clashing with the despair of shattered dreams, is converted into a new kind of energy. This energy is raw, visceral, and pulsating with life. It's the discordant sound of the blues. The blues born in this moment is akin to electric energy sparked by the friction of opposing forces, joy and sorrow, intermingling and colliding, creating a vibrant, dynamic tension. This tension is the lifeblood of the blues, driving its rhythm, shaping its melody, and infusing its lyrics with depth and meaning. In this scene, every heartfelt celebration, every tear of frustration contributed to the creation of a unique sonic landscape. The blues emerged as a musical embodiment of this emotional interplay, capturing the essence of a collective journey marked by highs and lows. It's a genre that doesn't just tell a story. It resonates with the lived experiences of a community navigating through the complexities of life. They were not just passive observers. These individuals were acutely aware, as the video points out, of the political shifts in Washington. Eric Foner, in his seminal work, Reconstruction, updated edition, America's Unfinished Revolution, 1863 to 1877, captures this sentiment. Reflecting on the period, Black missionary Jonathan C. Gibbs exclaimed, "We have progressed a century in a year. Yet this progress was fraught with setbacks and heartbreak. It was a complex tapestry of hope and despair." This era, with its stark contrasts and deep emotional currents, laid the groundwork for the blues. It was in these moments of profound change and intense personal struggles that the soul of the blues began to take shape. Now, picture this. Scene right out of a movie, but this was real life, pulsing with the heartbeat of a newfound freedom. Eric Foner captures a pivotal moment in American history in his writings. Now again, just picture this now. On February 18th, 1865, as Union forces led by the valorous Black 54th Massachusetts Infantry marched into Charleston, the atmosphere crackled with an electric charge. Their voices, rising in unison, belted out John Brown's Body, a song that resonated like a clarion call of liberation, echoing through the streets. This was more than a mere military maneuver. It was a potent symbol of change. The very first federal soldier to stride into Charleston was an African American astride a mule, bearing a sign that boldly proclaimed liberty. This image, so powerful and evocative, speaks volumes about the turning tide of history. John Brown's Body, a gospel hymn reimagined, paid homage to the zealous abolitionist John Brown. Brown's moral indignation towards the institution of slavery had set him on a path of armed rebellion, leading to his eventual execution. His legacy, however, lived on, stirring the hearts and spirits of those who shared his conviction. And on that day, Charleston was transformed. It became a vibrant stage for an extraordinary display of jubilation, a veritable grand jubilee of freedom as described by Fauner. Picture the streets thrumming with life and energy as over 4,000 black citizens united in a massive parade. Now, this was a powerful demonstration of pride, resilience, a tapestry of human spirit woven together by tradespeople, soldiers, and school children. Together they marched, a united front under a banner that declared a profound truth. We know no master but ourselves. The spectacle reached its apex with a mock funeral procession. In it, a coffin declaring slavery is dead was followed by a train of women mourners, a symbolic burial of a long era of subjugation. Now, the message was unmistakable. Slavery was not just defeated, it was being actively laid to rest. Then came April 14th, a day resonating with historical irony. 4 years to the day after the Civil War erupted in Charleston Harbor, a band of Northern luminaries, including preachers, politicians, and abolitionists, gathered for a ceremony of unity and reconciliation, the raising of the flag over Fort Sumner. Among the crowd was a poignant figure, a black man who, with his daughters at his side, stepped forward to express gratitude to William Lloyd Garrison for his tireless fight against slavery. Nearby, the steamer Planner, captained by Robert Smalls and packed with a jubilant black crowd, wove its way through the harbor. It was a living emblem of the newfound freedom, so overwhelming that Smalls momentarily lost control, and the ship collided with another during the ceremony. This moment, with the Union flag soaring high, brought a white Army officer to tears as he stated it marked the first time it symbolized equality for all, regardless of color. In Richmond, the scenes of jubilation mirrored those in Charleston. Amid the smoldering ruins left by retreating Confederate forces, emancipation came alive in the streets. The black population, elated by the sight of black soldiers and their band playing Year of Jubilee, celebrated the arrival of freedom in the heart of the Confederacy. The air was filled with songs of liberation, dancing, and prayers. It was an atmosphere electric with the promise of a new beginning. Even Lincoln, a figure almost mythic in his significance, walked the streets of Richmond, greeted by throngs of former slaves. They saw in him not just a president, but a savior, a liberator. Though Lincoln himself, always modest, asked them to stand as equals. The words of a Richmond black to his former owner capture the essence of this moment. There was to be no more master and mistress now. All the land belongs to the Yankees now, and they gonna divide it out among the colored people. That same day of a victorious flag-raising ceremony in Charleston, the air of celebration was pierced by the somber news of President Lincoln's assassination. Now imagine the scene, tears streaming down the faces of men, women, and children as the tragic news spread through the crowd. It's not hard to envision in moments like these a woman or a group of women, their emotions too powerful for words, spontaneously bursting into a spiritual song, their voices weaving grief and grace in equal measure. This juxtaposition of joy and despair would become a recurring theme throughout Reconstruction, a period Gregory P. Downes describes in After Appomattox, Military Occupation and the Ends of War as more than a series of legal and political battles. Indeed, the struggle for rights and equality was not just confined to courtrooms and congressional halls. It was, as Downes eloquently puts it, fashioned in the armed struggle among freed people, soldiers, and rebel insurgents, created in legal rhetoric and also in blood, sometimes at gunpoint and frequently through martial law. This paints a picture far removed from the sanitized version of history we often encounter. The reality was that the fight against white supremacy continued long after General Lee's formal surrender at Appomattox. Okay, we're just gonna keep rolling.
At Appomattox, we passed 2 more amendments guaranteeing voting rights, birthright.
This was a muddle of history, a chapter often glossed over or obscured in textbooks, yet crucial to understanding the roots of the discontent that would later find voice in the blues. Downes sheds light on the brutal reality of this period. In regions far from military stations, guerrilla warfare raged. In coastal South Carolina, regular and irregular bands swept in after Sherman's men marched northward, attacking slaves with ruthless abandon. In St. Paul's Parish, South Carolina, a band of guerrillas under Dick Sims slaughtered at least 4 freed people and planned to kill any white Southerner who took an oath of allegiance. This is a period where joy and despair, remember that juxtaposition I was talking about earlier? It was in constant bedfellows, each moment of progress shadowed by a counterforce of resistance. Booker T. Washington, in his reflections, highlighted the crucial role soldiers played in cementing the concept of freedom for the slaves. He recalls a United States soldier reading the Emancipation Proclamation and the subsequent outpouring of joy and thanksgiving among the freed slaves. Yet, this jubilation was not universal. White Southerners, as Downes notes, responded with violence, a spiteful transfer of their resentment towards the freed people. Downes writes about the assaults that convinced officers that the war had in some form continued. It was not against armed defenders of the government, but its unarmed friends. The soldiers' alliance with African Americans was born not from personal sympathy or just from personal sympathy, but from a shared enemy. In response to these threats, freed people organized themselves into paramilitary groups, remaking Union and loyal leagues into forces for self-defense and political action. These organizations were not passive. They demonstrated their force to intimidate white attackers and silence black Democrats. Their actions, whether seen as defensive or aggressive, sent a clear message. They intended to forge a new public order and enforce justice. Now, by the end of 1868, the occupation had birthed extraordinary changes. Biracial Republican governments were seated in several southern states, with black legislators starting the process of remaking labor relations and local democracy. The ratification of the 14th Amendment and the election of President Ulysses S. Grant were direct fruits of these labors. However, as Downes points out in his book, this came at a cost. The states were not yet capable of defending themselves without military support. And the Army's role in protecting these fledgling democracies was somewhat uncertain. The Army remained a bulwark of civil rights and national power in states like Virginia, Mississippi, and Texas. It voided discriminatory laws, expanded jury service for freed people, and took control of many criminal matters. In Texas, the military was particularly bold, overturning the state's discriminatory laws and trying numerous cases before military commissions. However, the situation remained volatile. In the final days before the November 1968 election, Klansmen murdered a congressman amid a wave of killings. Governor Powell Clayton's response in Arkansas was decisive. Declaring martial law, he organized a militia force that broke the Klan's hold. Yet, this era of military intervention was drawing to a close. The Posse Comitatus Act of 1878, as Downs highlights, originated from white supremacists wanting the federal government to stop policing justice for blacks. Think about that for a second. It stripped away the military's power to act in civil matters, a significant step back in the fight for civil rights. In the late 1880s, as white Southern Democrats launched a new wave of fraud and intimidation, congressional Republicans attempted to expand the military's power to protect civil rights. The Large Force Bill of 1890 aimed at protecting voting rights, and it was a last gasp in this struggle for civil rights. However, it failed in the Senate, making what many saw as the coffin for Reconstruction civil rights. Then, in 1896, the Supreme Court's ruling in Plessy versus Ferguson effectively endorsed segregation, driving another nail into the coffin of the Reconstruction era. Man, this ruling ushered in the bleak era of Jim Crow, a period where the hard-fought gains of the previous decades were systematically rolled back. As the peacetime Reconstruction came to a close, the dreams of a truly united nation, where rights were guaranteed regardless of race, seemed to fade into the distance. The era of Jim Crow marked a return to a status quo that many had fought tirelessly to change. Yet, amidst this tumultuous period, the seeds of the blues, they continued to germinate. The struggles, the victories, the defeats, and the constant fight for dignity and equality found their expression in the music that would come to define an era and a people. This was the world that directly preceded the birth of the blues. It was a world where every joy was tinged with sorrow, every victory shadowed by the threat of defeat. It was in this world, amidst the clash of ideologies and the struggle for a new societal order, that the blues found its voice. A voice that spoke of pain and hope, struggle and strength. To fully grasp the essence of the blues and the proverbial deal with the devil that it represents, must first understand the deal that this nation itself made with the devil. The pact was a compromise to appease Southern Democrats who wanted the federal government out of their affairs, and weary Northerners tired of the relentless, low-velocity armed struggle against white insurrectionist obstructionists. This nationwide compromise struck a devastating blow to the hearts of freedom fighters and those who had been either direct witnesses or had learned through secondhand accounts of the era's monumental events. They had experienced the profound joy of the Emancipation Proclamation, a historic declaration that promised a new dawn of freedom. They had seen the symbolic act of raising the flag at Fort Sumter. This was a powerful gesture marking the end of a bloody conflict and the beginning of a hoped-for unity. These individuals had celebrated the passage of the 14th and 15th Amendments, landmark achievements in the struggle for civil rights and equality. Moreover, they had witnessed the groundbreaking election of numerous black officials and judges, a testament to the progress and potential of a nation striving to fulfill its promise of justice and equality for all. This period of hope and transformation, however, faced a harsh setback with that national compromise which withdrew the troops from the South and ended Reconstruction. Gregory P. Downs, in his insightful writings, highlights the story of Henry McNeill Turner, an AME minister and the first African-American chaplain in the United States Army. Turner, who served as a legislator during Reconstruction, lost faith in black people's prospects in the United States. This disillusionment led him to become a vocal advocate for immigration to Africa. As he exited the state legislature in Georgia, the very seats he and others vacated were filled by Democrats, including the grand titan of the state Ku Klux Klan. Turner's journey from hope to disillusionment mirrored the larger narrative of that era. His radical stances, such as advocating for women's suffrage, ordaining a woman as a deacon, and teaching that God was black, were born from a deep sense of betrayal by a nation he once believed in. This backdrop of disillusionment and betrayal was the crucible in which the blues was forged. In the next section, we'll explore how this profound sense of disappointment and frustration found its voice in the discordant sounds and heart-wrenching lyrics of the blues. But before we delve into how the final act of Plessy versus Ferguson contributed to a widespread disillusionment that nudged a subset of musicians towards a discordant sound, it's crucial to understand the underpinnings of Reconstruction. And it's in this understanding that we find the ingredients contributing to this unique sound. But equally essential is recognizing the spirituals that predated the blues, serving as its blueprint. Remember the despondent woman from the earlier video segment?
In the noise and confusion, a sweet-voiced Negro woman began the hymn, "Nobody knows the trouble I feel. Nobody knows but Jesus."
Her music, her trials, and her tribulations represent an often overlooked yet critical part of this history. The church music known as spirituals. Unfortunately, many writers and academics, both white and black, have overlooked the pivotal role the spirituals played in the formation of the blues. Alan Lomax, the renowned folklorist whose field recordings would define the whole genre, preferred the prison chain gang over the popular juke joints in his quest to find what he perceived as the primitive, unadulterated essence of blues music. Yet, he could have found the true essence of blues in just about any church throughout the South. Now, if Alan Lomax had set aside his preconceived notions about what the blues were supposed to be and stepped into a primitive, sanctified black church, he would have heard the original blues instrument in its purest form, the human voice. In these churches, vocalists had been singing in a unique style, one characterized by vocal distortions that defied traditional musical scales long before emancipation. Charles B. Hirsch, in his book Subversive Sounds, Race, and the Birth of Jazz in New Orleans, pretty explicitly describes this phenomenon. He writes about how bluing was central to black church music, with singers using their voices in ways that startled whites. In a New Orleans black church service in 1866, an observer noted weird songs, incoherent, irreverent shouts, mingled with violent contortions, wails and moans, quaint prayers and responses. These contortions couldn't be precisely notated due to their flexible use of pitch. The spirituals employed tones that traditional musical characters couldn't represent. Hirsch further explains how singers distorted notes in two ways. First, by utilizing blue notes, typically pitched below the standard notes of the diatonic scale, and second, by bending notes, employing melisma, creating odd turns made in the throat. This unique singing style, born from a profound depth of experience, was a precursor to the blues aesthetic we know today. But what prompted this distinct style of singing? To chalk it up solely to African heritage or the mere fact of enslavement is to really oversimplify and overlook the complex, harrowing experiences of those who lived through slavery. The institution of slavery in America, often referred to as the peculiar institution, was peculiar because of its reliance on a blend of brutality, psychological manipulation, and physical abuse. This form of slavery was markedly different from historical precedents, like Roman slavery, which, while brutal, allowed for more possibilities of freedom, education, and personal autonomy. In this peculiar and brutal form of slavery that plagued America, black people found themselves in what can only be described as the belly of the beast. Here, they were subjected to the rawest forms of psychological manipulation, cruelty, and hypocrisy. It was a world where the slaveholders paraded a distorted narrative of Anglo-Saxon civility and Christian values, a narrative starkly at odds with the reality of their actions. In such a context, enslaved individuals were not just passive victims, they were keen observers, acutely aware of the glaring contradictions in the world around them. They saw through the facade of genteel manners and pious expressions that the slaveholders exhibited, recognizing the hypocrisy that underpinned the slaveholders' daily lives. This constant exposure to such duplicity demanded a strong mental fortitude and a mindset geared towards resistance. In When Rape Was Legal, The Untold History of Sexual Violence During Slavery, Rachel Feinstein provides a heart-wrenching account from a former slave. He speaks about the devastating impact of violence of an intimate nature on enslaved women and how it robbed them of their dignity. This speech includes powerful examples of counterframing, a form of resistance where victims exercise agency over their frame of mind. When faced with unspeakable abuses, maintaining a sense of self-respect and dignity was a defiant act against the intention of these acts. which was to strip the victims of their humanity. Clark states in her book, "Now, if there was nothing else but this, it would make a slave's life as bad as death. Just think for a minute how you would like to have your sisters and your wives and your daughters completely, totally, and altogether in the power of a master." This was a former slave who shared the heart-rending story of his light-skinned sister who, at the age of 16, was sent for by their master. When she confided in her mother, crying, her mother's advice was to be decent and hold up her head above such things if she could. Yet when the master learned of her complaints, he sold her to another owner in Louisiana, where she eventually died from hard usage. This tragic story is a stark reminder of the dehumanization and suffering endured by enslaved individuals, particularly women. Despite her limited power, this young girl's effort to maintain her dignity in the face of such horrific circumstances was a profound act of resistance and a rejection of the degrading stereotypes imposed on enslaved black women. These instances of counterframing, as Feinstein terms it, were not just verbal or intellectual exercises. They were embodied in the spiritual sung during the few spare moments slaves had. The spirituals served as a psychological outlet for the pain and trauma of daily life under slavery. They were a form of emotional and spiritual resistance, a way to maintain. Now, in a pretty lively debate with my mom, who's studied music, we delved into whether blues music was inherently sad. I argued that confining blues to just sadness limits its expressive range. Yes, blues encompasses sorrow, but it's much more than that. It's a musical tapestry woven with a full spectrum of emotions, even in its up-tempo variants. Yet they all shared a discordant sound, a characteristic that initially pushed me away from this genre, despite my love for its modern renditions in R&B and hip-hop. Then I stumbled upon a revelation, a missing link, and realized that, as it often happens, moms are always right. Let's revisit what Charles B. Hirsch said in Subversive Sounds, Race and the Birth of Jazz in New Orleans. In this book, he mentions how singers in a black church startled onlookers with their unique vocal distortions. Bluing was central to black church music as well, as singers used their voices in ways that startled whites, Hirsch whites. He described a scene from an 1866 New Orleans black church service with weird songs, incoherent, irreverent shouts, mingled with violent contortions, wails, and moans. These expressions, he notes, couldn't be precisely notated due to their variable pitch, representing a blues aesthetic central to today's popular music. Now, this led me to listen to Near the Cross by the Mississippi Mass Choir. Although gospel choirs like this didn't exist on pre-Civil War plantations, the song's roots are deep in plantation spirituals. Just listen to the voices here.
Free to all the healing.
The emotions from which these voices emanate is the key. Throughout this essay, I've tried to maintain a scholarly tone, backing my assertions with credible sources, but now I'm relying on intuition and a bit of motherly wisdom. I believe the irreverent shouts and violent contortions Sir Hirsch documented were born from repressed discontent, or sadness. This emotional mix, a blend of worry, weariness, despondency, and defiance, altered the vocal range as the singers expressed their feelings. These were cries, sometimes suppressed and sometimes heartbreakingly overt. In an 8-page essay entitled Blues and Emotional Trauma by Robert Stollerow, a clinical psychologist, and Benjamin Stollerow, a pianist, they state, in the unifying experience of the blues songwriter, performers, and listeners are joined in a visceral linguistic conversation in which universally traumatizing aspects of human existence can be communally held and borne. Let me translate that for you. They're talking about the deep-seated trauma of watching your loved ones suffer, being powerless to protect them, and enduring unspeakable violations of your body and dignity. This trauma wasn't just personal. It was collective, shared by a community bound by shared pain and resilience. The blues became a medium through which this communal trauma was expressed and in some way processed. It was more than music. It was a communal catharsis, a way to bear the unbearable together. Now, let's shift our focus to a figure who played a pivotal role in shaping the blues as we know it. Charles Buddy Bolden, often hailed as the first innovator of the blues sound, Bolden's influence on the music world was profound.
Mama, this is Mr. Charles Bolden. This is my mama, Mrs. Ida Bass.
Inspiring countless musicians who followed in his footsteps. Buddy Bolden, born in New Orleans, was a cornet player whose powerful and emotive style captivated audiences. His music was rooted in the spirituals he grew up with, but he transformed them into something entirely new, a raw, emotive expression that became the hallmark of the blues.
How you make your living, Mr. Bolden?
I make the church music better.
His performances in New Orleans Lincoln Park, a space operated by the black community featuring a pavilion and skating rink, drew massive crowds. His stentorian cornet echoed miles, and his band's irresistible sound and fleshy showmanship made them crowd favorites. Bolden, known for his battles against other bands, earned the legendary moniker King Bolden. But Bolden's influence wasn't confined to Lincoln Park. He performed in various venues around New Orleans and beyond, including Union Sons of Honor Hall, also known as Funky Butt Hall, and Masonic Hall in Algiers. His music reached far, even influencing a young Louis Armstrong, who grew up just down the street from one of Bolden's frequent venues. Now, contrary to popular myth, Bolden's band didn't play in the Vice District of Storyville, but rather around its edges in honky-tonks. His performances were not just about entertainment, they were a profound expression of channeled discontent. Through his music, Bolden conveyed the complex emotions of his life and times, the struggles and joys of his community. Bill Matthews, a trombonist who knew Bolden, said, "On those old, slow, low-down blues, he had a moan in his cornet that just went all through you, just like you were in church or something." This statement encapsulates Bolden's ability to convey deep, visceral emotions through his music. Unfortunately, Bolden's life was as turbulent as his music was influential. By 1906, his behavior became erratic, fueled by binge drinking and sleepless nights. His decline was rapid and tragic, culminating in his commitment to an insane asylum in 1907, where he spent the rest of his life until death in 1931. Now, despite his tragic end, Buddy Bolden's legacy in the world of blues is undeniable. He was a pioneer who laid the groundwork for future legends like Louis Armstrong and King Oliver. His discordant sound, a reflection of his unique experiences and times he lived in, was a significant contribution to the development of the blues. Continuing from where we left off, let's delve into the story of another pivotal figure in the development of the blues, Jelly Roll Morton. His journey and unique experiences played a crucial role in shaping the evolution of this genre, particularly in how he channeled his experiences into a discordant yet captivating piano sound. Jelly Roll Morton, born Ferdinand Joseph Lamoth in New Orleans, was a child of the city's vibrant and complex cultural milieu. Growing up in a Creole of color family, Morton found himself irresistibly drawn to the blues, or les blues. Did I pronounce that right? Les blues, as it was known in his community. This music, emanating from the dance halls and brothels of Storyville, was imbued with a sense of rebellion and liberation, resonating deeply with young Morton. Despite his family's hopes for him to pursue a respectable vocation, Morton was captivated by the freedom and expressiveness of the blues. This music wasn't just a sound, it was a lifestyle, a bold statement against the societal norms that sought to confine and define him. Morton's light complexion, which gave him a marginal social status within the black community, was insignificant in the broader racial landscape of post-Plessy versus Ferguson America. To the white populace, he was just another black man, constrained by the harsh realities of racial segregation and racial prejudice. His early exposure to the blues came from musicians like Josky Adams, whose raw and risque performances left a lasting impression on Morton. He was fascinated not just by the music, but also by the lifestyle that surrounded it, a world of independence, creativity, and crucially, financial opportunity, which was rare for black men at this time. Morton's decision to embrace the blues led to a rift with his family. Now, keep in mind that the blues was associated with a subset of people who were considered the dregs and fringes of society. It would be the equivalent of, one of the Obama daughters wanting to become a fill-in at the fill in the blank with whatever comes to your imagination. Something, really out of step with her social position. You see what I'm talking about? Choosing the path of music, he was forced to leave home, finding refuge in mentorship under his godmother, Laura Hunter, a prosperous voodoo priestess. This association with voodoo, a religion often misunderstood and demonized, added another layer to Morton's complex identity. Under the tutelage of piano master Tony Jackson, Morton honed his skills and developed his unique style. Jackson, an openly queer black musician, was an inspiration to Morton, showcasing the vast potential of the piano and blues music. Morton's over-the-top macho persona, possibly a response to the perceived femininity of the piano, further colored his musical expression. As Morton navigated the evolving musical landscape of New Orleans, Mississippi, and beyond, he left an indelible mark on the blues genre. His experiences living through the changing social dynamics of the Jim Crow era, witnessing the fading of Creole culture, and encountering the brutal realities of racial segregation, deeply influenced his music. Morton's piano playing was more than just an artistic endeavor. It was a form of channeled discontent. Each note he played on the piano was imbued with the complexities of his life, the struggles, the joys, the defiance, and the resilience. His music was a reflection of his journey, a discordant yet compelling sound that captured the essence of his times and experiences. Now, continuing our journey through the roots of the blues, let's turn our attention to another key figure, Mamie Desdunes, a name, did I pronounce that right? Mamie Desdunes. Okay, I know I'm going to flub this one up. We're just going to have to take it for what it is. Mamie Desdunes, a name that resonates with a mix of legend and reality in the annals of New Orleans music history. Her story, largely passed down through oral tradition, including narratives given by Jelly Roll Morton himself to historian Alan Lomax, is integral to understanding early blues influences. It possibly led to the development of a unique three-finger piano style. This is a theory of mine that gives a new dimension to her musical legacy. Between these pivotal moments in Mamie Desdunes and Jelly Roll Morton's lives, let's delve into a metaphorical parallel that speaks volumes about the origins of the blues. Mamie's physical disfigurement, the loss of two fingers, didn't just change the way she played the piano. It transformed her limitations into a unique style that would resonate through generations. This adaptation, born out of necessity, became an unexpected source of creativity and innovation. It's a poignant reflection of how challenges, often seen as impediments, can lead to the birth of something profoundly new and influential. Now, let's juxtapose Mamie's physical disfigurement with the psychological and emotional disfigurement experienced by the descendants of slaves, a metaphor for the deep-seated inherited trauma and the legacy of slavery that marked the African-American community. This inner disfigurement, a blend of pain, resilience, and survival, became the wellspring of the blues. Just as Mamie used her three fingers to create a distinct piano style, these individuals transformed their collective historical pain and longing into a powerful musical expression. The blues in this light is more than a genre. It's a cathartic outlet, a creative response to adversity, echoing the resilience of a community that turned their disfigurement into a profound cultural legacy. This metaphorical interpretation offers a deeper understanding of how the blues evolved not just as a musical style, but as a form of emotional articulation. It's a story of turning scars into art, of transforming historical wounds into a narrative of strength and expression. As we explore the roots of the blues, these parallels remind us that in every note and lyric, there's a reflection of struggle, a survival, and ultimately a triumph of the human spirit. Jelly Roll Morton, himself a pivotal figure in the development of blues and jazz, always acknowledged the influence of Mamie Desdunes had on his music, highlighting her unique style and how it impacted his own musical journey. Quote unquote, among the first blues that I've ever heard happened to be a woman that lived next door to my godmother's house in the Garden District. Her name was Mamie Desdunes. She played a blues like this all day long when she first would get up in the morning.
This is the first blues I no doubt heard in my life. Mamie Desdunes. This was her favorite blues. She hardly could.
Mamie's life was not just a story of musical innovation. It was also a tale of survival and resilience in a changing and often hostile world. Her relationship with her father, a prominent civil rights figure, and her status as a child of an illicit relationship must have contributed to her sense of disillusionment with the societal norms and hypocrisies of the time. This disillusionment, I believe, found a voice in her music, contributing to the channel discontent that is a hallmark of the blues. Mamie's influence on Morton was not just about teaching him piano techniques. It was about passing on a legacy of emotional expression through music. In her style, in the stories of her life, she embodied the true spirit of the blues, a form of musical expression born out of the complexities of human experience, particularly those of marginalized communities. Now, let's take a turn in our blues journey and talk about a man whose guitar riffs echo through time, from the energetic intro of Chuck Berry's Johnny B. Good to the soulful depths of Tupac's Dear Mama. I'm talking about Lonnie Johnson, a name that might not ring bells like some other blues legends, but whose impact on the genre is undeniable. This man was a pioneer, and his story, as told by Chris Thomas in The Blues, the authentic narrative of my music and my culture, flips the script on what we thought we knew about the blues. First off, let's bust a myth here. Contrary to popular belief, the blues didn't start in the cotton fields of the Mississippi Delta and then make its way to New Orleans. It's the other way around. The blues was born in the bustling, vibrant streets of New Orleans and then spread to the Delta, riding the waves of phonograph records. And the guitar, today a symbol of the blues, wasn't always so. Initially, it was all about the cornet, trumpet, with guys like Billy Bolden, King Oliver, and Louis Armstrong laying the groundwork. But then Lonnie Johnson came along and changed the game. Born on February 8th, 1894, New Orleans, Lonnie Johnson was the first true guitar virtuoso in American music. What he did was nothing short of revolutionary. He took the improvisation and phrasing of the blues trumpeters and translated them to the guitar.
Well, it's too late to cry, baby. Your last chance is gone.
Imagine that. He was like a musical alchemist, blending the hot piano style of Jelly Roll Morton with the guitar, creating something totally new and mesmerizing. Lonnie Johnson's genius wasn't just about playing notes. It was about conveying emotions. telling stories with each pluck of the strings. His style made the blues accessible to those who didn't have access to big, expensive instruments. With just a guitar, something you could order from a Sears catalog, he opened the door to a world of expression for countless musicians across the South. But listen, here's the catch. Lonnie's music wasn't just for the professional musicians in the big cities. It reached the ears of tenant farmers and sharecroppers through the magic of the phonograph. For just a couple of dollars a month, these hardworking people could own a piece of this new and exciting world. They could hear the sophistication and the glamour of the blues through Lonnie Johnson's strings. It was a stark contrast to their own lives, and it inspired many to dream of a different future. Bob Dylan, in his autobiography, Chronicles, Volume 1, acknowledged Lonnie Johnson's profound influence on his approach to the blues. It's like Lonnie cast a spell with his guitar, and everyone who heard him play fell under it. Even the legendary Robert Johnson, often shrouded in myth and mystery, was influenced by Lonnie. He borrowed themes, narratives, and even vocal styles from Lonnie's recordings. In fact, Robert Johnson's Malted Milk and Me and the Devil have their roots in Lonnie's Blue Ghost Blues. In the world of blues, Robert Johnson's name is often mentioned with reverence, as if he were the ultimate bluesman. But listen, the real story, as Elijah Wald explains in his book, Escaping the Delta, Robert Johnson and the Invention of the Blues, paints a completely different picture. Robert Johnson, while respected among his peers in Mississippi, wasn't a superstar in the black blues world. His music had a limited reach during his lifetime and was largely known just within his own circle. The boogie bass pattern he used became popular among younger Delta players, and a few of his songs like Sweet Home Chicago, I Believe I'll Dust My Broom, and Stop Breaking Down eventually became standards. But to put him on the same pedestal as transformative artists like Louis Armstrong or Bob Dylan would be misleading. For 20 years following Johnson's death, if you had even mentioned his name in the black blues community, you would have likely been met with a puzzled Robert who? His style and influence were overshadowed as blues evolved and acoustic guitars were replaced by more contemporary sounds. Johnson's name remained in relative obscurity, known only to a small group of his Mississippi neighbors, playing partners, and a handful of white folk and jazz fans. Now, it was these white fans who would later elevate Johnson to the status of the king of the Delta blues, shaping the modern narrative of blues history. Their appreciation for Johnson's work was part of a niche minority taste. Even in 1960, it was assumed that few outside of the world of the Delta would know of Johnson's records. His mystery and obscurity were part of the appeal to this group, distinguishing him from more mainstream blues that was popular on the radio. Even today, while Johnson's music has sold millions of CDs and his image is widely recognized, many in the traditional black blues audience in the Mississippi Delta may not even recognize his name or are only vaguely aware of him as a historical figure. In contrast, Johnson is celebrated as a hero in the white blues scene, a scene defined more by the audience's demographic than the performer's race. Wall's perspective on Johnson is not to diminish his talent or historical significance, but to provide context. The author explores Johnson's discovery by the white world and his subsequent canonization in modern blues history. However, he first sketches the path of blues as black popular music, highlighting how the shift from a primarily black to a mostly white audience affected the genre. The shift from a working class to a middle class audience, coupled with a change in gender dynamics from a predominantly female to a male audience, influenced the standards and expectations of blues music. Black audiences wanted music that was entertaining, swinging, and familiar, while white audiences sought profound emotional experiences and a glimpse into a different way of life. This difference in expectation shaped how blues was performed and perceived, leading to variations in style and presentation between artists appealing to different audiences. Addressing the title, Striking a Chord with the Devil, and moving towards the conclusion of our video essay, it's essential to delve into the multifaceted symbolism of the devil in blues music and African American culture, particularly in the context of the Jim Crow era. Elijah Wall's insights in his book provide a perfect springboard for this discussion, so hey, let's get right into it. The devil in blues music, as represented in songs like Clara Smith's Done Sold My Soul to the Devil,
I done sold my soul, sold it to the devil, and my heart done to stone.
isn't just a literal figure from Christian theology. It's a rich metaphor that encapsulates the complex emotional and societal challenges faced by African Americans, especially those deeply rooted in fundamentalist churches. These communities often view the blues as a sinful pastime, which is a notion echoed in Richard Wright's autobiography, where his grandmother vehemently rejects anything that smacks of the devil's music.
Get off this toy. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves dancing to the devil like that.
But let's look deeper. The devil here isn't just about sin or supernatural pacts. It's a representation of the inner turmoil, the discontent that simmered in the souls of African Americans who were still reeling from the aftershocks of slavery and grappling with the brutal realities of a segregated society. In an environment where a wrong look or word could lead to lynching, the blues became an outlet for expressing this barely contained storm of emotions. In Wall's words, the blues, with its themes often touching upon despair and demonic pursuit, tell us more about the listeners and their romantic interpretations than about the musicians like Robert Johnson themselves. The fascination with the occult and demonic forces in blues is more a construct of the fans' minds than a reflection of the artist's intentions or the cultural realities of the time. Now, this is an important distinction to make. While the fans saw a romanticized, almost this mythical connection to the devil and supernatural skills, the reality was far more grounded. For African Americans, especially those in the Deep South, the blues was no more linked to the devil than any other form of dance or secular music. It was a form of expression, a way to articulate feelings and experiences that were otherwise suppressed or ignored. So, When we talk about striking a chord with the devil, we're not necessarily talking about some pact with a supernatural being. We're talking about engaging with the darker aspects of human experience, the pain, the sorrow, the injustices that were an everyday reality for African Americans. The blues became a medium to express these emotions, to share stories, and to find a sense of communal understanding and solace. Elijah Wall's call for a moratorium on cliched associations of blues music with demonic forces is a step towards acknowledging the true essence of the blues. It's about understanding the socio-cultural context in which these songs were written and performed, and appreciating them as expressions of human experience rather than as mere reflections of mythical or occult themes. Now, let's revisit my promise to explain some things earlier. The seismic impact of the Supreme Court case Plessy versus Ferguson on the musical landscape, particularly in New Orleans, the birthplace of the blues, cannot be overstated. This pivotal case not only shaped the socio-political climate, but also deeply influenced the cultural and artistic expressions of the time. Now, to understand its profound effect on music, we must first acknowledge a crucial fact. The blues originated in New Orleans, not the Mississippi Delta, challenging a common misconception. To further elucidate this point, let's turn to the words of Chris Thomas King, a prominent figure in the world of blues music. He states, quote, "African Americans of my generation turned their backs on the blues after it was redefined by white usurpers in the 1960s and 70s. We survived, ironically, thanks to white supporters. Today, the blues is a white musical genre dominated by whites on and off stage, a conundrum I've grappled with over the years," unquote. This phenomenon is not unique to the blues. It mirrors the trajectory of rock and roll, which originated in the black community, but was subsequently co-opted by white artists to the point where the term rock now predominantly conjures images of white guitarists. King further elaborates, quote, "The historiography of the blues was built by white sociologists, folklorists, and record collectors. Their recordings and documents are indispensable. Despite that, I have a big problem with their pseudo-sociological conclusions that were formed in large part by their own privileged status during the Jim Crow era. When deciphering such artifacts, a critical examination of their books, articles, and personal journals reveal that nearly all held an astonishing amount of condescension towards their Negro subjects, whom they recast as exotic primitives and noble savages. Moreover, this motley crew, motivated by greed, purposely obfuscated the truth, replacing it with instead myths, fairy tales, and half-truths. As a consequence, I have been alienated." Start from as a consequence. "As a consequence, I have been alienated from my own culture." Understanding the impact of Plessy versus Ferguson and its role in shaping the blues requires us to confront and correct these historical misconceptions. Rightly so, King spends a lot of time driving home this point that the blues originated in New Orleans and not out in some Mississippi slave plantation. King writes, according to pioneering blues clarinetist Sidney Bechet. Jazz was what white folks called the blues. Trumpet legend Miles Davis would often scold critics for using the word jazz to describe his music. Quote unquote, "It's a N-word," Miles said of jazz to the New York Times in 1981. Miles Davis believed the term jazz was used to diminish the important contribution blues made to the world of music because it was identified with blacks. All right, let's break it down. By nailing down the fact that the blues originated in New Orleans, with those brass legends trying to echo the haunting church sounds, we're setting the stage for something bigger. See, it's not just about where the blues started. It's about the domino effect that followed. The Supreme Court case Plessy versus Ferguson, it hit like a storm right at the heart of New Orleans. And when a storm hits, it changes the landscape, right? That's exactly what happened to the blues scene here. This case, it didn't just tweak the laws, it turned the whole cultural fabric of New Orleans upside down. And as the city's vibe shifted, so did its music. The blues, ever the mirror of its surroundings, started reflecting this new post-Plessy reality. It's like watching a tree grow and fast forward. The roots stay the same, but the branches, they twist and turn in ways you wouldn't expect. That's the blues for you. Deeply rooted in its birthplace, yet constantly evolving with the times. The impact of Plessy versus Ferguson on New Orleans, it wasn't just legal, it was cultural, emotional, deeply musical. Grappling the intricate link between Plessy versus Ferguson and the evolution of the blues has been the most daunting part of this essay. It's like piecing together a complex puzzle where each piece is steeped in history, culture, and emotion. In this quest for understanding, it's no shock that the insights of Leroy Jones, also known as Amiri Baraka, have been invaluable. Baraka, with his multifaceted identity as a poet, activist, and writer, seems to embody the very essence of channeled discontent. That was so characteristic of the early blues pioneers. It's through his lens that the impact of this pivotal court case on the blues becomes so deeply evident. He writes about this in his book on the evolution of African music in America, Blues People. This ruling didn't just uphold a discriminatory law, it dealt a crushing blow to the aspirations of equality and justice for African Americans. Chris Thomas King, again in his book, The Blues, the authentic narrative of my music and culture, offers a vivid portrayal of this tumultuous period. He underscores the pivotal role of the Desdunes family in challenging the segregation laws. Now let's circle back to a name I mentioned earlier, Mamie Desdunes, the pianist renowned for her unique three-fingered style. Intriguingly, she was the sister of Daniel Desdunes, a key figure in the fight against segregation. Mary's significance extends beyond her musical talent. According to Chris Thomas King, in his book, Jelly Roll Morton considered her the first known composer of the blues. This connection isn't just a footnote in history. It represents the intertwined nature of cultural and legal battles of the time. Mamie Desdunes wasn't just an artist. She was the progeny of that era's civil rights icon. The intertwining of legal struggle and cultural expression was at the heart of the emergence of the first discordant sounds of the blues in New Orleans. This music wasn't a mere artistic movement. It was a resolute response from Louisiana's proud Creole culture, pushing back against the encroaching Americanization and annexation of its way of life. Now that we have a pretty firm grasp of what Plessy versus Ferguson is, let's turn to Amiri Baraka's profound insights on how this case reshaped the musical landscape of New Orleans. Baraka, a poet and activist, captures the essence of this transition in his book, Blues People. He explains how the segregation acts of the late 19th century severely impacted the black Creoles of New Orleans. These laws stripped them of their previously enjoyed economic and social advantages, isolating them from the white society they had assimilated into. Consequently, Creoles who were once prominent in the city's cultural life found themselves marginalized. Their classical training and European influences clashing with the raw, expressive style of the uptown blues musicians. Baraka eloquently describes this cultural shift. The classical timbre of the trumpet, the timbre that Creoles imitated, was not the timbre that came into jazz. The rough, raw sound the black man forced out of these European instruments was a sound he had cultivated in this country for 200 years. It was an American sound, something indigenous to a certain kind of cultural existence in this country. This transition marked a critical moment in the evolution of the blues, as it embraced a more humanly expressive sound, diverging from its European classical roots. And Amiri Baraka's insightful exploration of the blues, he highlights a poignant quote from Creole violinist Paul Dominguez. See, us downtown people, we didn't think so much of this rough uptown jazz until we couldn't make a living otherwise. I don't know how they do it, but damn, they'll do it. Can't tell you what's there on the paper, but just play the hell out of it. This statement encapsulates a significant shift in the New Orleans music scene, driven by economic and social pressures. Dominguez's words, "until we couldn't make a living otherwise," hint at the profound impact of the escalating segregation laws that intensified after the Plessy versus Ferguson decision in 1896. These laws not only segregated public facilities, but also had far-reaching effects on the livelihood of black musicians. As a result, many were forced to adapt to new styles and venues, or even migrate from New Orleans in search of opportunities. This migration, particularly notable during the early 20th century, was propelled by the need to find economic stability and creative freedom in an increasingly segregated society. Now, when we talk about striking a chord with the devil in blues, we're not chatting about some spooky deal with a mythical figure. No. It's way deeper than that. It's about tapping into that raw, real stuff inside of us. The channeled discontent. The complex emotions that make us who we are. You see, the blues isn't just a bunch of sad songs. It's a rich, tapestry woven from the discordant sounds of life itself. It's about the juxtaposition of joy and pain, feeling them both so intensely and letting that tension drive the music. This isn't just about playing notes, it's about playing feelings, experiences, the very essence of being human. And let's not forget about counterframing. The blues artists took all the hardship, all the pain, and they flipped the script. They took those narratives of suffering and turned them into stories of resilience and strength. It's like they were saying, yeah, life is tough, but we're tougher. So when we talk about striking a chord with the devil, it's really about facing those inner demons, the fears and pains, and turning them into something powerful. It's about making music that resonates, that speaks to the soul. And that's what the blues is all about. It's a testament to the power of the human spirit to rise above, to find beauty in the blues, and to keep the melody going no matter what life throws at us. In this essay, we've ridden the roller coaster of blues history from the emotional upheaval of post-Civil War America to the vibrant streets of New Orleans and beyond. Each step of the way, the blues has mirrored the African-American experience, their struggles, their victories, their unyielding spirit. It's not just music, it's a legacy, a voice that continues to echo through time, reminding us of the power we all have to transform adversity into something truly extraordinary. The blues is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a musical expression also born from the depths of suffering and the heights of hope. It's a genre that has evolved and adapted, reflecting the changing times and the ongoing struggles for equality and justice. From the spirituals sung in the fields to the discordant sounds of Buddy Bolden's cornet, from the revolutionary guitar style of Lonnie Johnson to the raw emotion of Jelly Roll Morton's piano, the blues has been a constant companion to the African American experience. But the blues is more than just a historical artifact. It's a living, breathing art form that continues to resonate with audiences today. Whether it's the soulful vocals of a modern R&B singer or the gritty guitar riffs of a contemporary blues artist, the essence of the blues lives on, reminding us of the power to heal, to inspire, and to bring people together. As we conclude this exploration of the origins and evolution of the blues, I hope that you've gained a deeper appreciation for the rich history and cultural significance of this genre. The blues isn't just about the notes played or the lyrics sung. It's about the human experience and all its complexity and beauty. It's about the ability to find hope in the darkest of times, to find strength in the face of adversity, and to keep on moving forward no matter what. So let me tell you, the next time you hear a blues song, whether it's a classic recording or a live performance, take a moment to listen beyond the surface. Listen for the echoes of history, the voices of the past, and the enduring spirit of a people who refuse to be silenced. Listen for the power of the blues to move us, to inspire us, and to remind us of the incredible resilience of the human spirit. Thank you for joining me on this journey, the history and heart of the blues. I hope that you've been inspired to dig deeper into this fascinating genre and to appreciate the profound impact it has had on American music and culture. The blues may have been born in a specific time and place, but Its message is timeless and universal. It's a reminder that no matter how dark the night may seem, the dawn will always come. And with it, the promise of a new day and a new beginning. All right, y'all. Before we wrap up, I want to get real with you for a moment. This video essay, it's been a labor of love, but let me tell you, the journey to get here wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. The research, the digging, the late nights trying to piece together this complex puzzle of blues history, it took a toll. Y'all feel me? I've been at this for 5 long years, and there were times when I wasn't sure if I'd ever see the light at the end of the tunnel. I see the lights now. But here's the thing. You, the viewer, you're just as invaluable to me. I need you to hit that like button, smash that subscribe, and get that algorithm working in a brother's favor. You feel me? Drop a comment also. Let me know what you thought of the video, what resonated with you, and what you'd like to see more of.